Welcome to the next edition of Chemo Coffee Talk. I am very excited. I think I say I'm very excited every single time I interview a guest, but I think it's really funny that sometimes before we hit record, we can have some really good conversations, and it feels like this is a good match for a conversation. So I'm very excited today to introduce Susan Hurley, founder of CharityTeams. And I am taking this right off her website because I still have a little bit of chemo brain, and the last thing I want to do is say the wrong thing when I'm introducing my guest. So it's the ultimate solution for charities looking to raise funds through athletic events. And it's been around for over 10 years. They've helped hundreds of runners achieve their goals while raising an impressive $36 million for nonprofits. So welcome, Susan, to Chemo Coffee Talk.
Thank you, Carly. It's an honor to be here and talking with you. Actually, I've been in business for almost 18 years now. And yes, it is the ultimate solution. I love that for raising funds through endurance events. So thank you for that compliment.
Yeah, and also I will mention that Susan has ovarian cancer, stage 4. So we had a little bonding talk about that before we hit record. And she said I was perfectly welcome to mention that. And I think that plays into some of the questions I'll be asking you of what the inspiration was for you to start. Why don't we start there? So I'll just ask you, what inspired you to start CharityTeams? And how was this vision you had? How did it start for connecting athletic events with impactful fundraising for charities?
Yeah, well, it certainly started long before I had ovarian cancer, but life comes full circle, as we all know. And I work for many cancer organizations. But I started it sort of on a whim. A friend of mine had said to me, you ought to get into this charity running thing. It's starting to get very popular. And Dana-Farber and Team in Training were really the only two really most prominent charities that were really involved in it. So I sort of checked it out. I had been in sports marketing and I had been in just a runner my whole life. And I thought, wow, this is kind of interesting. How do I do this though? And they just said, make it up. You can do it. You've been in marketing. It's really a marketing position. Make it up. You can do this. Lo and behold, I started with one charity, the Boston Marathon, the Lazarus House in Lawrence, which was basically right in my backyard in North Andover here, and raised a lot of money for them first year. And that success led me to branch out, and I ended up the following year getting 4 more charities on board. And now with Boston Marathon alone, I have over 40 charities, and I also work with races like the New York City Marathon, Chicago Marathon, Falmouth Road Race, Big Sur Marathon, and many, many others. So it's just turned into something that I didn't expect, but I'm glad I took the risk.
That is awesome. And yeah, making the decision to take that risk is really scary, because I know sometimes you have this great idea, but it's like, how am I going to go about doing it? And I think that sets the people who do what you do apart from others. A lot of people have the ideas, but say they're going to do it and don't do it. But it takes a really special person with a mission to actually take the action to do it. So I think that's awesome. So you've raised, is it true that over $36 million for nonprofits?
Yeah, it's probably
is that up
more
to date?
than that now. It's probably closer to over 40 million.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say close to $40 million. Since doing this with small nonprofits, it's been, when I pinch myself when I think of that number, because it's a lot of money, and it gets put back into our community to help some incredible causes. And every charity is some form of saving a life, I feel like, whether it be a charity for mental health or a charity for cancer or a charity for, kids in underserved communities. So I'm very proud of the fact that I've been able to play a role in that. I certainly don't take all the credit for that. I'm sort of the Keith Lockhart orchestra leader of all these charities that I work with, and they're the ones that are really, the runners are really doing the work. So I give all the props to the runners, and they've worked really hard over the years. I just am the one that sort of puts the puzzle together.
Yeah. Well, we all need that type of person. What has been let's talk about the moments in your journey. What's been your proudest moment? And then you can talk about your proudest moment or your biggest challenge. You can start with one or the other, whatever comes to mind first. But yes, your proudest moment since you started this. And then what did you think is one of your biggest challenges?
Yeah, I think I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to go with my biggest challenge. My biggest challenge was obviously last year and the last couple years when I started going through ovarian cancer and working the amount of hours that I normally work, because I'm one woman show here managing all these runners. So when I got diagnosed with the stage 4 ovarian cancer and having to miss after training really hard, miss the Boston Marathon for the first time in many, many years. My oncologist did not want me running. I had been going through chemo, just starting chemo, and I was fine out training, but she really was adamant that I did not do it. And that was a challenge for me as a runner because I felt fine. And so that was difficult for me. But then my proudest moment was when I decided that the following year, after I was in remission for about a few months and then it came back, the following year, I just made my decision that on my own that it didn't matter what anyone told me, I was going to run the Boston Marathon again. And I was going through chemo at the time, and very harsh chemo, harder than the first round. And I was having chemo on Fridays and running long runs on Saturdays. So you can imagine how difficult that was for me, just not only physically, but emotionally, just to be able to get up the next day and say, I've got to go out and run 20 miles or 17 miles. But I had such a good support system around me of runners. The runners community is just amazing. So those people were just constantly cheering me on. That's the one thing about my life that I can honestly say is I've been so blessed by the running community. These people are just incredible human beings, and many of them know and understand cancer because a lot of the charities I work for are cancer. And so family members are going through it and whatnot. So they were helping me, but I was also helping them, I was also helping them as an inspiration to help them in their journey. My proudest moment was when I crossed the finish line with my son, Max, who ran with me. We did a run walk for last year's Boston Marathon after, being in chemo and going through chemo and all of that, and having a major surgery at the beginning of my training. And just crossing the finish line with him as my support in my journey was absolutely the proudest moment, I think, in my life, because, you have that self-doubt that creeps in, can you do it? And, with his help and the help of my other son cheering me on, my son Ryan, we were able to accomplish what was really my goal, which was to finish the Boston Marathon and to push back on my medical team, because I wanted to do it, and I still have to live my life given the fact that I have ovarian cancer. I want to be able to do all the things that I normally do. Normalcy is what gets you through all of these things, normalcy. So being a runner and having that be normal for me to go out and run the Boston Marathon, I couldn't allow it last year for them to say, no, you can't do it again. It was yes, I can do it. And I'm going to show you that I can. It was the greatest thing I ever did.
Love that. You're speaking my language. And I think you probably will agree with a lot of people who have been listening to this podcast for a while or read my book, or just know me, know how important fitness is to me. And I oftentimes talk about the analogy of taking a fitness class or doing a Tabata or taking on some kind of fitness challenge, which pushes you to your limits in a controlled environment. I think if you can learn how to handle it in that situation, you can take the lessons you learn from that to apply it towards the challenge you're facing, like we have with cancer. So talk a little bit about that. Do you find that an athletic event or running, do you think the whole experience has helped you in your battle with ovarian cancer?
Absolutely. So first of all, let me just say that running itself is a spiritual experience. So being out there in the cold, in the challenge, in the wintertime, training one-on-one and listening to my Christian music and knowing what I've been through and sitting there and I'm running and, I'm raising my arms in the air and I'm joyful and I have inner peace, but yet I'm going through this cancer. I mean, it's so joyful. It's so happy. Here I have cancer and it's so serious, but yet my heart is so filled with so much joy. How can that be? How can that be? So, I look at things and I guess I look at things with a very positive outlook. And I think I said to you earlier when we first got on the phone, it's I get up my life every day. I get up, I live my life every day according to how I feel. I never feel bad, I think, because I have so much joy in my heart and joy in my life. The only time I feel bad is when I'm being I got to go for scans and I'm getting the fear-mongering going. You get up, you do your thing. You can't let things get you down, get hit by a car, So why not live your life filled with just joy every single day if you feel fine.
Yeah, that's what I focus on too, is always, I feel like there's a lot of people who haven't connected to that joy experience. I talk about it, finding joy in fitness, but even finding the little things as you go about your day that make your heart smile, that don't involve anybody else. I think if you can focus on those things, that's what life is all about. And that, again, helps you get through situations like we are in. It helps you get through a long running race. You have to be able to notice those things, or you will never connect to life how you need to.
Yeah. And I also think that you have to, when you're in this situation, you can't, sometimes you can't physically do what you normally would do. So you have to step back. So, you're talking about going to classes and things like that. You can still go to classes, but you might not be able to do what you normally do in there. Even just sitting in the room with the positive attitude on the yoga mat can help you, can heal your heart. You don't have to, all you have to do is just, you tell the instructor like, hey, I'm not feeling it today, but I needed to be here for my mental health. So you show up anyways, and you just listen, and you let the people in that room provide the healing for you and the positive energy, and you will get through. Like, there have been times I haven't been able to physically go out and run 17 miles, but I might be able to run 3 or 4. And that's okay, because that's what I could do on that given day. That's the best I could potentially do. But I feel like by the end of it, when I've run 2 or 3 miles, I feel like I've run 20 because I have the power of the group behind me and they're all cheering me on. And I get out of there and I feel good. And I feel better that I went out and did it than if I sat home and if I didn't do it.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And I also think it's important to remember that us doing what we are doing, or any cancer patient who makes the decision to get up and move and run, even if it's for 1 or 2 miles or walk or whatever it is, it's like doing it with a 20-pound weight on your back compared to everyone else. And that's something to be applauded. And that's something that I think it's important for cancer patients to remember, so they don't feel down and they don't keep comparing themselves to their former self, because the strength I think it takes to show, like, making the decision that you are going to run the marathon with the diagnosis, and maybe some doctors telling you that you shouldn't. You know your body. We talked about this before we hit record. Like, that's superhero strength, that mind-body connection you have. Do you think your cancer journey has deepened that mind-body connection?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I just think my faith in God has gotten me through so much. I mean, I pray constantly, and I give everything up to God all the time, because I feel honestly like He's the only one who can heal me. But yeah, I just look at my journey in general, and I think to myself, God, it's been one of like just emotional roller coaster, but mostly of happiness. Like, it's brought me things in my life that I never thought I would have or see or realize. I mean, you talk about like the little things, and it'll be funny. I'll be out, doing a walk run or doing a run or something, and I'll see like something like a bird that's on the top, the very, 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 very tip of the top of a pine tree, and I'll think, oh, that's like amazing. Like, I never noticed any of those things before. Like, the things that I notice in my life are just things that I feel like I attributed to like signs from God. I mean, if you're a cancer patient, you probably understand what I'm talking about. You realize things, your eyes are wide open now.
Yes.
You're so awake to so many things.
Yeah. And that's one of the silver linings of having to go through any difficult experience. But since we're talking about cancer, that is something that you can take from it that you could say is a positive thing, because it's your choice. You have a choice to find the positive, and you have a choice to just sit in it and not look for something meaningful.
And I think I've always felt like I've been at an advantage because I came from a fitness background. I mean, if I were to tell anybody, any young person going through this, and there are a lot of young women that are going through breast cancer and whatnot, it's like, get up, get out, move. Even if you're not feeling it, go for a walk around the block, get fresh air, breathe it in. look up to the sky. Thank God that you're out there. And every day it will get easier for you. It will get easier. Just, you got to give it a chance. It's not going to happen overnight. Fitness is the key to the quality of life. It's the key to quality of life. I mean, I've believed that my whole life. I missed the bus in second grade. That's when I started running. I tell everybody that, and I used to watch the bus go, and the bus driver wouldn't stop, and I'd have to run a mile to school. And back then, I was only a little kid, but it was safe back then to do it. And that's how I started running. And then, I started cheerleading, and I've put the two together because I'm like Boston's biggest cheerleader, but I cheer for runners now. And, and I have the running. Like I said, I've been running my whole life. I couldn't imagine my life without fitness, even in the face of ovarian cancer.
I feel like we're soul sisters. You are saying exactly what I say all the time. I cannot imagine my life without fitness. It is such, it's like you, it's been there since I was very young. I was fortunate enough to make that connection that it was something super beneficial, and I could see the health and the physical and mental benefits from it. So I think that when people can get that connection, it can change everything. Now just to take it back to CharityTeams, because now that I'm talking to you more, I can see like why you've been so successful, because I feel like you make me want to go outside right now, like to put my sneakers on after this talk and just go run and run and run. So I know that CharityTeams creates a fundraising experience, that's what you call it, for runners and nonprofits. So how do you foster such a positive and community-driven approach? Like what's your mission there? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to realize with everybody that comes into my program that everybody has a story, right? All these charity runners, this is the beauty of the Boston Marathon charity program, is like you have thousands of runners that apply to the program, get selected on these teams that are running for different reasons. Everybody has a story. I think sharing those stories helps motivate other people. Sharing my story. I just did my first long run with all of my teams this past week. It's like the elephants in the room. Everybody knows I have cancer. I know they want to ask me about it. I come right out. I tell them everything. I talk about it. And I want them to tell me their story of why they're running. We're all a community together. If we can share our stories, we can be more encouraging and more supportive of each other and better understand each other as human beings.
Love that. I think that's so important. And like I said, you sharing your story gives that connection that you really need, and that motivation when you really need that to be there. So I absolutely love it. Looking ahead, what are your aspirations for CharityTeams? So what are your big goals for the upcoming year?
So my aspirations for CharityTeams are, not financial, personal, or anything like that, but really more getting more people involved with endurance running, but really teaching people in life. This is really my mission nowadays, is that life is a marathon, right? We are all part of this great marathon of life. And there are times when you're going to start out really good in life and things are going to be going great. And then smack, you're going to hit heartbreak hill and something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. How are you going to face that challenge? How are you going to get over that hill? So really being a person that puts forth the message that life is a marathon and teaching people to get through that. And the ways that they can get through that are really on focusing on, faith, number one, good health, taking care of yourself, taking care of the other people around you, and really trying to persevere every single day, be grateful, and you will get through those challenges, because we are all here. There are our challenges every single day. Everybody has challenges that we face. You're going to have them in your life. There's going to be that cross that you're going to have to bear. How are you going to get through it? Are you going to back down, or are you going to be an example and are you going to step forward? I always say, don't look back. You're not going that way. So we look forward. We look forward in life, and we look forward, and I think we try and set an example and be grateful.
I had a guest, Colleen Conahan, on the podcast a few weeks ago, and she talked about how she's an ultra marathoner, and she talked about how that kind of experience, any kind of endurance sport is such a great lesson in problem solving, because you're out there and, like you said, things are going to happen and you're going to have to figure out how you're going to get yourself to that finish line. So that, like you said, it's a great way to set yourself up for success beyond that. So I love that. I really, really love it. How can we find more information on Charity Teams? And remind me, is it just in Boston area, or you said that it's in the New York Marathon too? How can people go about finding it?
Yeah, so they would go to my website, charityteams.com, and they can find out more information there. If they're interested in running a marathon for, say, a nonprofit, or they're looking to get into Boston Marathon, they didn't qualify, and they want to get in through a charity program, they can go to the Boston drop-down link, or same with New York City. I have a link for New York City. I have a link for Chicago, and a link for Falmouth Road Race and Big Sur, whatever they're interested in. And I reply back to all emails personally. So if people are interested and they just need more information, they can email me at susan@charityteams.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Susan. I really enjoyed our conversation. Like I said before, I love when I talk to people and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you speak my language. So this has been so great. I look forward to connecting with you again. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.